Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're fiddling while Rome burns. Our country is in danger of losing the democracy that we valued for so many years. And we look forward to the 250th anniversary of our Constitution and our nation, when the Constitution that James Madison drafted is being torn apart by this administration. Powers that are given to the legislature, powers of the purse in Article 1 to Congress, are being surrendered to the executive. The ability to just eliminate offices that have been funded by Congress have been given to the executive. There are checks and balances in our Constitution, precious checks and balances that make us different from countries like authoritarian countries, where the ruler is like the king and does whatever he or she wants. And we're destroying those checks and balances. Congress is supposed to check the executive, and we're not doing it. They're taking our powers. They're destroying offices that were created by Congress, like the Department of Energy and the Department of Education. And the Peace Institute, which was set up as an independent group, not part of Congress, not part of the executive, and they've gone in Doge with police officers from D.C. and taken it over, and they're trying to eliminate it. And there are all other kind of offices like that that they're trying to eliminate. Our country is in danger right now. And immigration is important, but if we don't have a country, immigration isn't an issue. And I'm just astonished at how many people, particularly on the other side of the aisle, are surrendering their power to Trump and letting him do whatever in the hell he wants. We had a continuing resolution. There were community projects authorized by each congressperson. I think almost all had community projects in there, and we wiped them out. But Article 1 says we're in charge of the purse, and we come up and make recommendations, and rather than include them in a congressionally ordered continuing resolution, we eliminate them. That makes no sense. We have given up our Article 1 powers, and Trump is just doing whatever he wants, and we don't even question him or challenge him. I wrote a letter to Kristi Noem on February the 14th, and I have not gotten a response to it. I served with her. I should have gotten a response. I wrote her that I inquire about the Department of Homeland Security's immigration enforcement policies, priorities, and communications. And I let her know in the letter that I agree with her that we should get the worst of the worst. She called it the worst of the worst. But there have been conflicting reports on who ICE is picking up and detaining. And I appreciate her letting me know who they picked up, how many of those were child sexual abusers, homicides, or rapists, where those individuals were apprehended and where they were previously in custody of another law enforcement agency, and how many went to Guantanamo Bay and whatever. I appreciate her clarifying the number of immigrants, if she would, who are the worst of the worst, and those who have been convicted for murder, rape, and child sexual offenses. This was on February 14. I have not heard from her. It's now 2 months. But she's had plenty of time to put on her cowboy breeches and her cowboy hat and ride on a horse, fortunately not shooting any dogs on the way. She's had time to pose in front of people in prison in El Salvador, dressed as she does with her Rolex watch and looking whatever and talking, using them as a prop. But she doesn't have time to answer a congressional request to state who have they arrested and who are the worst of the worst, and are they getting the worst of the worst. I have to presume her failure to answer is the fact that they're not getting the worst of the worst. And on CNN the other day, they showed a graph, and I don't know their stats, but at least they're given stats, that show that most of the people that were sent to El Salvador were not convicted of any crimes in this country, any felonies. They were not the worst of the worst. They might have had a bunch of ugly tattoos on. I don't know who they were, but they had a right to due process. And when we come into office, we take an oath to support the Constitution and to support the Constitution and our country against all enemies, domestic and foreign. That's not an oath we take just when it's easy. Saying that these people who are all tattooed and maybe they're members of this gang, I don't know. Nobody hardly knows. But that may not be easy in this climate. But due process is important all the time, and it's most important when it's in the worst circumstances, the most difficult circumstances. That's when you have to stand up and abide by your oath. So I appreciate everybody here in uniform, and thank you for what you're doing in protecting the laws of this country. The fact is, Our country is at risk right now, and we need to stand up, support our oath, and keep the powers of the Congress as they have been intended, and stop this president from a coup d'etat and an authoritarian takeover. And I yield back the balance of my time.
Mr. Fry.